in a little district west of Washington Square. The streets have run crazy and broken themselves into small strips called places. One street crosses itself a time or two. An artist once discovered a valuable possibility in this, that a collector with a bill for paints, paper, and canvas would, in traversing this route, suddenly meet himself coming back without having collected a penny. So, to quaint old Greenwich Village, the art people soon came prowling, hunting for north windows and 18th century gables and Dutch attics and low rents. Then they imported some pewter mugs and a chafing dish or two from 6th Avenue, and a colony was established. At the top of a squatty 3-story brick, Sue and Johnsy had their studio. Johnsy was the name of one, short for Joanna. One was from Maine, the other from California. They had met at the table d'hote of an 8th Street restaurant and found their tastes in art, chicory salad, and bishop's leaves so congenial that the joint studio resulted. That was in May. In November, a cold, unseen stranger, whom the doctors called pneumonia, stalked about the colony. Touching one here and there with his icy fingers, Johnsy lay, scarcely moving, on her painted iron bedstead, looking through the small Dutch window panes at the blank side of the next brick house. One morning, the busy doctor invited Sue into the hallway. He said the chances were, he named a number, in 10. And he added that whenever his patient began to count the carriages in her funeral procession, medicine subtracted 50% from the curative power of drugs. He said that her friend must find some way to make Johnsy interested in asking what winter styles would bring in sleeve trimmings, and what her chances were of getting a good part in a new play. Then Sue went into the workroom and cried until she had dampened a Japanese napkin. Then she swaggered into Johnsy's room with her drawing board, whistling a ragtime tune. Johnsy lay with her face toward the window. Sue stopped whistling, thinking she slept. She arranged her board and began a pen and ink drawing for a magazine story. She heard a low sound, several times repeated. She went quickly to the bedside. Johnsy's eyes were open wide. She was looking out the window and counting backward. Through the window she could see the bare, dreary yard and an old ivy vine climbing halfway up the brick wall. The cold breath of autumn had stricken its leaves until its skeleton branches clung to the crumbling bricks. There were only a few left on the vine. Johnsy said she would go when the last leaf fell. Sue found old Berman in his dimly lighted den below. He was a failure in art. For 40 years he had wielded the brush without getting near enough to touch the hem of his mistress's robe. He had always been about to paint a masterpiece, but had never yet begun it. For several years he had painted nothing except now and then a daub in the line of commerce or advertising. He earned a little by serving as a model to those young artists who could not pay the price of a professional. He drank gin to excess and still talked of his coming masterpiece. Sue told him about Johnsy's fancy and how she feared she would float away like a leaf when her slight hold upon the world grew weaker. Old Berman, with his red eyes plainly streaming, shouted his contempt and derision for such idiotic imaginings. He said it was foolish for some people to die because leaves dropped off of a confounded vine. He demanded to know what was the matter with that old ivy vine that Johnsy should let herself be buried for it. Then he said it was a terrible thing to let a little girl lie sick and think such things. He would come upstairs to see Johnsy, and he would sit as a model for Sue's painting of the old miner. The next morning, Sue awoke after an hour's sleep to find Johnsy with dull, wide-open eyes staring at the drawn green shade. She told Sue to pull it up. She wanted to see. Sue obeyed wearily, but after the beating rain and fierce gusts of wind that had endured through the livelong night, there yet stood against the brick wall one ivy leaf. It was the last on the vine, still dark green near its stem, but with its serrated edges tinted with the yellow of dissolution and decay. It hung bravely from a branch some 20 feet above the ground. Johnsy spoke again. She said that it was the last one. She said she thought it would have fallen during the night, and that she had heard the wind. She said it would fall today, and that she would die at the same time. Sue leaned her worn face down toward the pillow and said that she must think of her. The doctor had told her that morning that Johnsy's chances for recovery were not bad at all, and that with proper care she would surely get well. But Johnsy said again to watch the leaf and tell her when it fell. The day wore away, and even in the twilight they could see the lone ivy leaf clinging to its stem against the wall. And when night came, the north wind was again loosed, while the rain still beat against the windows. When morning came, Johnsy commanded Sue to raise the shade. The ivy leaf was still there. Johnsy lay for a long time looking at it, and then she called to Sue, who was stirring her chicken broth. She said she had been a bad girl. She said that something had made that last leaf stay there to show her how wicked she had been. It was a sin to want to die. Sue asked what she might bring her now. Perhaps a little broth to start, and then a small looking glass, and then some pillows. And then Sue would sketch Berman and herself together. Johnsy said she wanted to sit up and watch Sue cook first. And then she said she wanted to paint the Bay of Naples someday. The doctor came in the afternoon, and Sue had an excuse to go into the hallway. She told him that Johnsy was out of danger and well on the way to recovery. And then the doctor pressed Sue's thin, shaking hand and said there was another case he must see downstairs. Berman, his name was some kind of artist. Pneumonia, too. He was an old, weak man, and the attack was acute. There was no hope for him. The next day, the doctor said to Sue, "One chance in, well, it is better than none." And that afternoon, Sue came to the bed where Johnsy lay contentedly, knitting a very blue and very useless woolen shoulder scarf, and she put one arm around her, pillows and all. She said that she had something to tell her. Mr. Berman had died of pneumonia that day in the hospital. He was ill only 2 days. The janitor had found him the morning of the first day in his room downstairs, helpless with pain. His shoes and clothing were wet through and icy cold. They could not imagine where he had been on such a dreadful night. And then they found a lantern, still lighted, and a ladder that had been dragged from its place, and some scattered brushes, and a palette with green and yellow colors mixed upon it. Sue asked Johnsy to look at the last ivy leaf on the wall. Had she not wondered why it never fluttered or moved when the wind blew? Ah, darling, it was Berman's masterpiece. He painted it there the night that the last leaf fell.